Our next presenter, again, I've no idea what he's going to talk about, but I'm sure he's going to be fascinating. So please give it up for Mr. Stephen Hampshire.
Okay, so tourists spend a lot of time in churches and art galleries and looking around at you lot in bars. And that's great, that's good, but with this rough guide to natural history museums, I'm going to try and convince them to spend a bit more time in natural history museums. So it might be a bit of a reach to say that a natural history museum is the crowning achievement of, human civilization. But I'm going to say it anyway, because I think it's true. I think they show us at our very best. They're brilliant buildings. This one in Paris, you can actually go and have a drink there as well, so you'd be happy. Maybe the starting point is to have a look at the kind of natural history museums that there are in the world, where they are, what types there are, try and classify them. And that seems kind of appropriate, because that's really what natural history museums do for animals, isn't it? They classify them, and it all kind of grew out of, colonialism, imperialism, people in pith helmets walking around Africa, shooting animals and sending them back to London or Paris or wherever they sent them, which we take a bit of a dim view on now, rightly, but at least we get to benefit from that. So they could be a bit morbid. The one in Dublin is called the Dead Zoo, but at least we get to engage with these things that are, they might be dead, there might be fossils, there might be bones and skin, but they are somehow engaging a bit like the real animals are. Some of the more modern ones, they go for animatronic T-Rexes, they go for touch screens, try and get the kids in, and that's good. I like an animatronic T-Rex as much as the next man. But I think there's something about those skin and bones and fur that is, because it's real, much more engaging. Certainly much more engaging than these kind of hand-wringing exhibits about human impact on the natural world, which, I think there's some important stuff to learn there, but it's hard to take when it's all sponsored by an oil company, isn't it? And I think those sort of po-faced exhibits just aren't as engaging as looking at a real animal, even if it's a dead real animal stuffed on a pedestal. This little girl, by the way, is the Natural History Museum in London's 25 millionth visitor since 2001. I think that speaks for itself, really. So the Natural History Museum in London was the first one. It was set up by this guy, Richard Owen, who had a bit of a fight with Darwin. So he didn't really buy Darwin's whole theory of evolution by natural selection. But he still deserves a bit of credit for having the idea to start collecting things in the first place. And a big part of the role of natural history museums, I think, is that it has taught us about evolution. Looking at the way animals fit together into kingdoms and how some are evolved from others teaches us where we've come from. I think that's a big part of it. So they teach us about evolution. They teach us about ourselves as well. So empire builders built these big grand buildings and gave their names to the animals they collected. I wonder what the natural history museums we're building now, or we're running now at least, tell us about ourselves. So Darwin got a load of stick at the time, as you can see in the picture, for preaching evolution. A lot of people didn't buy it, didn't like it. I think it was, anti-religion. Nowadays, the argument is pretty much won, isn't it? I think we all believe in evolution, or at least most of us do. We all know we're descended from people like Lucy, who's 3.2 million years old, and looks, reasonably well preserved for 3.2 million years. And I think there's nothing that gives you a sense of where you've come from better than going to a natural history museum and seeing your cousins and your ancestors. Which makes it even weirder that there are people who still just don't get it. So this is the Creation Museum in Kentucky, and because they don't believe in deep history, they cram everything together and they show humans living alongside T-Rexes, which is just insane. The buildings themselves are really cool. So this is the one in Oxford. It's a cool building. Natural History Museum in London is perhaps even cooler. And the other thing about the one in Oxford is it has the best preserved remains of a dodo, which is kind of the sad thing about a natural history museum. Most of the stuff that's in there is dead, obviously the individual is, but also the species are quite often extinct. And it makes me a bit sad that I'm never going to get to see a trilobite, because they're funky little critters, but they went extinct 250 million years ago, so can't get to see one. To put that in a bit of context, we've been around for 200,000 years. So trilobites lasted all of that time of history and then went extinct. But the amazing thing is we still can go and see what they look like, all the different species of them. So to bring all this to a bit of a conclusion, bit of a top five. So my top one is easily the Natural History Museum in London. I think it's the best one in the world. It's filled with the fantastic stuff. The building's cool. It's free. Next time in London, if you haven't been, you should definitely go. To round out the top five, well, it's all very personal because there's so many of them and they're all cool in different ways. I love the one in Dublin because it is the very opposite of something with touch screens and animatronic stuff, or even a functional ceiling would be nice in that. But yeah, you can all pick your own. They're all brilliant. All I'd say, my message to you is next time you're on holiday somewhere you've not been before, seek out the Natural History Museum there, because there's always one in every city and they're always worth a visit. Thank you very much.
Stephen Hampshire, ladies and gentlemen.